Welcome to Healing Your Families. I'm Emma Lou Penrod, and I help you as a parent go from frustration, stress, and overwhelm to calm, confidence, and joy so you can achieve the quality of family life that you desire. I am so excited for our guest today. I have Laura Christine. She is a master gardener and traditional naturopathic doctor. So I am so excited to be able to discuss with her how gardening can enhance family wellness. Laura, welcome.
Thank you, Emma Lou. It's a joy to be here.
And I'm glad to have you here. We met through networking, and I just, I am really attracted to that idea of gardening as a family thing. When we talk about wellness, we quite often just think of our physical well-being, but I know that gardening is not only a benefit physically, but emotionally and spiritually. I had the fortune to grow up in a family that really lived that. My parents owned 7 acres. We couldn't really call it a farm, but we had a large garden. We grew chickens and sheep and beef and goats. So we provided a lot of our own food. And I remember working together, canning and working in the garden, taking care of the animals. And it was a family bonding time. We ate well. We still bought some food from the grocery store, but we didn't need to buy much. So, Laura, tell us how you got into gardening.
Well, I have been gardening all my life. We didn't have we didn't have that amount of acreage, but my parents loved to garden. Wherever we would go, as far as we moved a couple of times and had a couple of different houses, they would always put in a vegetable garden or a flower garden or something. So I was helping my mom since probably about 5 years old. And I fell in love with it. Same kinds of things, canning, always a fresh, my biggest and best memories are just that garden salad with fresh tomatoes, celeries, lettuce, all of that straight from the garden. And then my mom would put a little blue cheese on there, and I'd have my favorite dressing, and there was nothing like it. So that's a big memory for me. But I have just continued that tradition with my own family. And about 3 to 4 years ago, I decided, I need to start helping people. In addition to, I'm doing the traditional naturopathy, which is food based because, food is our medicine and food helps us stay healthy. So I just kind of tied the two together. And that's where I got my start, was from my parents.
Yes, it really starts in the family, doesn't it? So,
It
how did
does.
what drew you to naturopathy? Well, it sounds like, and I hadn't realized that before, that the approach is food is our medicine.
Yes. Yes. Actually, what drew me into the field was I got sick.
Oh,
And yeah, and I had an illness, a chronic illness, that I started to go down the allopathic, and the medications and everything I had reactions to because I was super sensitive to things. And the illness that I had basically was an autoimmune condition that I basically hurt from head to toe. And so I kind of did a 180, and I started going to this gal who was a chiropractor, and she also had a background in functional medicine, and discovered I had an allergy to 39 different foods. My body was basically just like reacting to everything from stress and et cetera, et cetera. And she basically helped me for about 5 years. It took me 5 to 7 years to get out of it, but I did it all with supplements and organic, healthy foods. I did what they call an elimination diet, where you just take, certain foods out and let my body heal. through foods and supplementation. So that's kind of how I kind of backed into the field, and loved it so much, as far as there was so much to learn, that we have forgotten. I'm helping people with different modalities in what they used from 100 years ago. Some of them have been around that long. So I just love the combination of gardening and naturopathy, but that's how I basically wound up in the naturopathy, and then I introduced the gardening a couple of years ago.
When you talk about food allergies, my experience has been what we're really allergic to is the processing we're giving our foods. For example,
Yes.
wheat. I understand that, there is something to the theory that it's how we're treating the wheat that is causing the allergy.
Yes, correct. The wheat we use nowadays is so processed. There's really there is still a wheat out there. It's called Eichhorn wheat. It is the original. They say it goes back hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. It's basically has been untouched as far as processing, but the way we farm and the way we process, there's really no nutritional value in the wheat. And then they have the gluten part of it, the protein part of the wheat, in addition to the processing. Sometimes the body just does not do well with it, and it takes time. It takes time. Some people may not have like allergies or intolerances to wheat, or another one is dairy. But if you have it enough with the right combination of non-nutritious food and stress or whatever, unfortunately the body is you're setting your body up for a whole lot of hurt. No pun intended, but it goes straight to inflammation.
So
So
it sounds like there's several factors involved. It's the
yes,
quality. It's what we eat, and
right.
then that stress, and then it's the combination. Have you ever known of a case where someone was allergic to an organic food, something that?
I have not. I have not come across anybody that has had that. Though unfortunately, there has been a lot lately of cross pollination. So now there are some questions as to, are we getting a true organic product that you buy, which of course is more expensive too, because of the lack of processing. You would think the prices would be the opposite, but they're not. But there's been a lot of cross pollination. They've been finding, it's almost like a variegated whatever plant, because the wind blows seeds and pollen into fields. And unfortunately, there's not a big, it's getting better, but there's not a lot of organic farming practices out there yet. But I think the farming industry and people are waking up. Organic and natural alternatives it's probably the last numbers, and I'm probably off a little bit, is about a $34 billion industry. And that those stats might be a year or two old. So people are catching on to, healthier food.
So, if you're growing your own food, you have your own garden, are there certain steps you can follow to make sure it's as organic? And that word I know has, sometimes I wonder if we're really clear on what that means. But let's start by defining what organic means and then how we
Okay,
can use that if we're growing our own.
sure. Organic basically means not using anything that is uh, chemical, used with chemicals. It basically means chemical free. Now you can use different, we're going to take an example. If you have insects, you can use more natural insecticides, but they are not based in a chemical, soup background. So organic is basically a chemically free, natural method type of gardening, or, foods that they do that.
So then would that mean growing your own seeds?
Well, there are different ways to do it, and there are different you can have, there's several different seeds out there. There's organic seeds, there's organic heirloom seeds, and heirloom seeds can be just heirloom, and they can also be organic and heirloom. Heirloom seeds are seeds that have been passed down for a minimum of 50 years. They say, I'm saying 50 years, I'm trying to remember, at least 50 years, 10, they do it by 10-year increments. The beauty of heirloom seeds, they call them open pollinated, which means you don't need a pollinator or you don't need another plant to pollinate the original plant. So the wind can pollinate them, the insects can pollinate them. They're usually stronger, and they are usually they have more nutrition in them because they are not modified whatsoever. Now organic, the farmer has farmed those heirloom seeds using natural methods and no chemicals. That's how you tie those two together. And then you have all of these other terminologies when it comes to seeds, like GMO, which means genetically modified organism, and that basically means they've messed with the DNA of the plants. You have hybrids. They've taken two of the same family, and spliced them together. So those are all manipulative things that they've done with those plants. Those plants, particularly what they grow for conventional farming, with conventional farming practices. So you not only are messing with the DNA of a plant, but then they're putting chemicals on top of it. Because a lot of times when they mess with the DNA or they have hybrids or that kind of stuff, they're still getting bugs. And so they spray. So because the original intent of hybrids and GMOs is to get a strong plant, to grow a lot of production, and keep the pests down. But unfortunately, it seems it hasn't done so well and it's backfired. So then they have to add more chemicals. So hopefully that's not too confusing, but there's all of these different types of seeds out there. I personally suggest with people is the heirloom and organic, if you can find it. Generally, you can find an heirloom seed that if people are going to save them, they have more of a tendency to lean towards organic practices.
And you said if you can find them, where
Yes.
I taught high school for a number of years, and just across the street from a high school was another man who had gardened all of his life and was so passionate about him that I would always arrange every year to have at least one trip, just walk across the street and have him show us his garden and explain what he did. And he said repeatedly, you plant the seed to get the plant, and then you use the plant to get the seed. And he would get his own seeds. I don't think he ever bought, unless
that's fantastic. And that's one part I left out. Heirloom seeds, you can take the seeds and plant that and get the same exact plant the next year. Hybrids and GMOs, generally you cannot. You might get a plant, but it won't have the same characteristics sometimes. It just depends. But yes, and if it says organic, they're still doing hybrids with organic. They're mixing everything together. So that part can be confusing. The easiest way I tell people is organic, heirloom, if you can marry the two. If not, heirloom is probably the best bet.
Okay, that sounds good. And do you find, I guess it depends. You just need to know what's available in your area. I know my husband
There's different
orders seeds,
there's
seeds catalogs. Yeah.
Yes, there's actually, I use several different companies. One out in your direction, I use Victory Seeds. They're organic. There's another company, and I think it's out by you guys also. They call themselves 99-cent Seeds, and they are all organic. They're a fairly small company. And then out by us, I'm here in the Midwest. There's a place called Baker's Seeds, and they are all heirloom, organic, and they're in southern Missouri. So there's little pockets, but it's taken me years to figure out who's good, because I will buy organic heirloom. Sometimes I've had some really good luck, sometimes I have not. So it's kind of trial and error.
But with your years of experience, you probably have some companies you recommend
Yeah,
for your
I've got a
plants.
couple, like the ones I've mentioned. Those are my favorite. Those are my go-to, and my rate of return is probably between 90 and 95% of the seeds I plant will sprout. So of course that's a biggie.
Okay, well, we touched on the advantages. To me, it's not only are you putting yourself in a position that you're going to be able to feed yourself no matter what happens. And we've seen the shortages at the stores, that kind of a panic, but also because I have so many happy, and it sounds like you do too, have those happy memories of time of doing this as a family, family time. I think this is a valuable life skill that parents can teach their children. And that brings us to, so just how much land do you need to garden?
You really don't need, if you don't have anything, there's always containers on a patio. Or, I've taught people that way. I've taught people in the city with just these little, like step out maybe 200 feet. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can really grow anywhere. It's actually how you set things up is where your success lies.
Well, I've seen those tower gardens that you could just have in your kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they have those. Yeah, I mean, there we have so many options, and I've noticed actually over the past year and a half, there are just so many creative ways to grow things, and so many more new products out on the market. Yeah, or if you don't even want to buy that, you can just grab a flower pot from Walmart or a plastic container. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can grow it really in anything.
Yes, I agree. Now, my observation would also be it does take commitment and consistency. You can't plant the seed and then forget it.
Right. Right. And those are actually, I have I call it the 3 steps to gardening success. And that is the setup, the timing, and the consistency. And the setup is, your sunlight, your soil, what kind of soil you're using, where it's located, those kinds of things. And then the timing is knowing what your zone is, your growing or your hardiness zone. And that's super important for picking different varieties for your zone. And it's also, if you live in an area where you get frost or colder weather, you have to know those dates. So that's your timing. And then of course the varieties that you picked. And then of course, like you just said, the consistency. And it's the day in and day out of watering and checking your plants and looking at them and getting into that habit of knowing, like, that plant doesn't look really good. Let's just check it out, and by being consistent, you can catch things faster if there is a bug or something going on, whether it's overwatering or underwatering, those kinds of things. Those are the 3 pieces to success for sure. And to life, really. You can flip it on its head because I've taught on that too. Setup, timing, and consistency. It works.
Another powerful life lesson. And it's also the answer to the question of someone who said, "Well, I tried gardening and I'm just not a gardener. I just couldn't make it work." But if they followed that, setup, timing, and consistency, if they followed that, then that would probably solve that problem of they tried it once and it wasn't successful.
Exactly.
And I love how teaching this to your children too. Think how just applying this to getting through school, starting a career, raising a family, strengthening a relationship. It
Right.
really applies to everything, doesn't it?
It totally does. It totally does. And then when you flip it back to going out in the garden, like we're talking family wellness, it's wonderful to be outside in the fresh air. That relaxes the body. It's satisfaction and achievement when you see something growing. it's even better when, you get that first tomato and then you bite into it and you're like, oh my gosh, I grew this. And that tomato that you grew, if you're doing organic principles, or, you're super careful about keeping it healthy, has 20 to 30 times more nutrition in that tomato than what you're buying at the store. So of course that's healthy for you. And like you as it's a good family time together, of working together, of setting goals, of accomplishments, of figuring out problems, trying to solve problems. I mean, it's a win-win all the way across the board. And you get exercise too, whether you like it or not.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I think it's a wonderful adventure for any family to go into. And as we pointed out, you can live in an apartment and still do some gardening, or you know. Now, I
Oh,
want to ask.
anything.
Yeah, yeah. Are you familiar? I've seen from time to time these apps you can get on your phone. You take a picture of a plant and it'll tell you what it needs. Or are you familiar with any of those? Or
I'm familiar with them. I don't use them that often, but I am familiar with them, and I think they're great. It's a good learning tool. There's a lot of tools out there. Yes, definitely. And I would suggest that for people that don't, they have apps out there I've seen for weeds too. If you don't know if you're looking at a weed or not, that's a biggie.
well, I've seen people use them if they just want to identify what plant is this, and it will identify the plant. I just wondered how accurate they are. Um,
They're
you
pretty
know,
accurate. You kind of have
okay.
to feel your way through it. Yeah, but they're pretty accurate. When they first came out, not so much, because their libraries weren't real large. But I think we're really having a gardening revival now in our country for sure.
Yeah.
And these apps specifically have a lot more information, identifying the plant, not only the identification, but all of the information that goes with it. I was looking at one, and I don't use them, that often. I kind of go through just to see what's out there. And there was one, I wish I could remember the name. I'll have to see if I can find it. But you put in your zone and they gave you a list of everything, according to the season and what you were looking for. And then you could identify your plants too, to see, where it fell into that type of information. So I look at those things like tools. It's as much as going on the internet and doing your research, or talking to somebody like me or you that have gardened. And that's another beauty of gardening. What I love is gardeners and people that farm or garden are always helping each other, because everybody always has something that they've done, and you're always learning. I mean, can you say, we've been gardening all our lives, and there's always something to learn. I'm not the authority, I've done it a lot, but it's just like, there's always something to learn.
Yeah, it's not a competitive you know,
No,
venture by any means. And I agree with
no.
you. This gentleman who lived by the high school loved it. He just craved, please bring the students over. He just loved sharing what he knew, and it was just a rich treasure. I really loved it.
Oh, it is. That is
And I
really
think,
cool.
as technology keeps advancing, so those apps will become even better. And I'm hoping that any families watching this are ready to start gardening at some level together. I think it would
Yes.
strengthen the family. They would be providing some healthy nutrition. So, and you've talked a lot about your gardening, how you help families and support them with gardening. Tell me a little bit more about your naturopathic services, and then I want to make sure people know how to contact you.
Sure. Well, I'm a traditional naturopath, which basically means, there are naturopaths out there. They have more of a medical science background, more of a Western medicine approach. My approach is kind of a combination of different modalities. I've got some Ayurvedic or Indian medicine, Chinese medicine, herbology. different things like that. I'm more focused. Basically, what I do is I help people change their lifestyle. I have a lot of my specialty in supporting people is chronic illness, because been there, done that. And so I have a passion for helping people, of just supporting them in their journey, because it is a chronic illness. Unfortunately, our medical systems aren't real good with the chronic part. And I'm kind of like come alongside, and let's look at what you're eating, what you're doing. And I'm closer to, if people are still not sure about what traditional naturopathy, it's kind of like they call it functional medicine. We look at the body as a whole, not just a little piece. In Western medicine, you have specialists, which is great. They know about their area, but they don't take into consideration everything around it, unless, like a heart doctor, of course, they're going to pay attention, or a brain surgeon, those kinds of things. But sometimes they miss the whole body and how it works together. Like I think we talked here before about the spirit, physical, and the soul, or the mindset, how it all interacts, how it's all connected. That is my approach. What I have found in my own journey, and as well as my clients, is that 90% of illness, especially chronic, is what's up here.
Wow.
It's the mindset.
I believe it.
As soon as I started cleaning that out, I started to get better.
Okay. So they would reach out to you, probably have some discussions, you would get information, and then
I do a 30-minute for the naturopathy. I'll do a 30-minute, just like a kind of get to know you, so we can talk, so I can tell you what I do, how I have a nutritional questionnaire I go through with people, and chit chat, and how I can help them. Yeah, I don't have that at the forefront, so they're going to have to go to my gardening website. I kind of do. I was a naturopath strictly, probably for the past 7 or 8 years, but I've introduced my gardening piece. Not that I'm not interested in helping others with the naturopathy, but just reach out to me at Kitchen Garden Expert and say, hey, I saw you on Emily's, and I'm interested in naturopathy, and we can help with that. And then a lot of times, a lot of my clients too, I teach them how to garden, and what foods from the garden are nutritious, and how those interact with the body, and those kinds of things. So
well, that actually sounds like a natural path. Let's start with the gardening, and then that leads into the nutrition, and yeah, that makes sense.
I kind of did it backwards. Started with the naturopathy and was like, the gardening goes really well with this. I never thought of that.
It does. It does. So they would go to, say that again,
Kitchen Garden Expert.
kitchengardenexpert.com.
.com. Yes. And there's a part where you can just hit contact me. There's my email is on there. And I also have my phone number, if that's easier. If they want to find me anywhere else, you can find me on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is Laura Christine, but all of the other social media, like Instagram and those kinds of things, is Kitchen Garden Expert.
So on LinkedIn, you're Laura Christine. Anywhere else, you're Kitchen Garden Expert.
Yes, ma'am.
I love it. And I hope
Thank
everybody reaches out. You have a lot of, and it sounds like you have a lot of valuable information on your website too, that they could benefit.
I try. I love helping people, and I love educating people, and there's so much in our world that's it to me. I'm a nerd. It's fascinating. I'm a lifelong learner. It's all fascinating. Food, vegetables, yes. Herbs, whatever.
Oh, yes. And Laura, thank you so much for your time and sharing this wealth of information that will help families. And
thank you. Thank you. It's been an honor to be on your show. This has been fun. This has been a lot of fun. I wish we had a couple of hours.
Yes. There's a lot more we could discuss. So, maybe we'll just have to continue this later.
Yes, definitely. I would love to.
So, for my viewers, make sure you visit Laura Christine on LinkedIn, kitchengardenexpert.com. And join me next week. We'll be talking to Pamela Sylvan on managing our space in our home, more of the mental wellness. Until then, love yourself, love your families. We're making the world a better place by strengthening families. This is Emmylou Penrod at healingyourfamilies.com.